Our latest search experiments resulted in approximately 70% of shops having more visibility in search, with the share of search impressions from small and medium shops increasing by nearly 30%. Later this summer, we'll empower sellers by giving them more agency and actionable insights than ever before.
So there's some new breaking news from Etsy, once again, and their CEO on SEO, and that it could be changing forever and hopefully in a good way. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn it over to Chris Schaefer, who has a clip from Josh Silverman that recently just announced this and discussed it. And we're going to actually hear people asking questions about it. So I'm really, really excited to hear this as well. And this is the first time I am listening to this news. So Chris, I'm dying here to hear this. Why don't you get this thing queued up and let us get in on this?
Yeah, so I did the hard work of sitting through the Etsy Q2 investor call, which I would not suggest that anyone does. It was one of the weirdest experiences of my life, but it was worth it, Scott, because we were able to pull out a couple key pieces of information. And what I did was I took a portion from the regular scheduled programming of the investor call where they talk about what they've done and what they're doing. And then I added in a part that came in to clarify a little bit from the Q&A section at the end. And you and I did a video recently on Etsy's black box SEO algorithm and some of Josh Silverman's thoughts on this. This is talking and expanding on one of the points that you and I found really interesting. So if you're ready, I'll just go ahead and hit play on my side here and we'll listen to what Josh has.
Go for it.
Initiatives we're making in quality to ensure we highlight the very best of Etsy, differentiating ourselves in a sea of commoditized merchandise. We stand for keeping commerce human. And we have an enormous conviction that doing this in a way that no one else can is our most important competitive advantage, and that these initiatives represent a tremendous unlock for buyer consideration. We mentioned on our last call that we're using large language models and Gen AI techniques to better understand both the shopping mission you're on, as well as our sellers' inventory along these 4 key focus areas: suppressing and removing items that violate our policy, up-ranking better quality listings in search and recommendations, and better curating and organizing our marketplace. I'm extremely proud to report on the fantastic progress our search team is making to move beyond our historical focus on solving for relevancy in search, when you know what you want and can't find it anywhere else, to new initiatives meant to also highlight the best of Etsy and feature the incredible diversity and uniqueness of our sellers' merchandise. In the past, our search algorithms ranked each listing individually based on likelihood to convert.
Can I just say that I feel vindicated, right? Anybody that's watched Brooklyn Nine-Nine, give me some hands in the chat or something, right? I'm channeling Captain Holt right now and screaming vindication, because this is what you and I have talked about. And he's hinted at this in that black box SEO call where he said, look, if you go to YouTube, you watch all these things, they're telling you it's all about stuff and keywords, and that's not really how we work. He's very explicitly saying here now, that's how it has always worked in the past. It's about conversion. How likely is your listing to convert if Etsy shows you for that search term? So Scott, if everything else is equal, we have the same title, tags, photos, whatever, you have a higher conversion rate than I do, you rank higher than I do.
He just said it
right now. Yeah.
He literally just said it. So I'm glad, like you said, Chris, I'm glad that we know that what we were saying was pretty true. At least that's what we're thinking, because, well, I mean, the CEO should probably know how things work. So I don't know.
It's almost like reading all of those documents and parsing through the weird legalese that Etsy writes everything and paid off. Who knew?
Which often resulted in buyers seeing far too many similar items rather than a more holistic set. Here's some powerful data. We roughly cut in half the percentage of searches where a high percentage of listings seen on page 1 are from a single seller. We reduced the percentage of searches that have 2 or more listings that may appear identical by over 70%. We're incredibly excited about what this might mean for future visitation as buyers see a more diverse and higher quality set of listings each time they visit Etsy. In addition to helping buyers, these initiatives also support our sellers, given how important it is that we nurture the best of Etsy across our seller base. Our latest search experiments resulted in approximately 70% of shops having more visibility in search, with the share of search impressions from small and medium shops increasing by nearly 30%. Later this summer, we'll empower sellers by giving them more agency and actionable insights than ever before into factors like listing quality and completeness that can impact how they show up in search.
That's a good one.
Our search engine right now is...
Pause that, Chris. Yeah, so I think that's interesting because that's what we said in the SEO black box. That video that we did a reaction to, it was audio. If you guys missed that, we'll link that up in the description. That was the very, very private for investors, really. It was a meeting that was held and we got a hold of the recording. We did it legally. It was out there. We just had to dig for it. And then we listened to it. And that there explained what they call the SEO black box. And Josh went ahead and talked about that, but he also talked about what he's sharing now. And he's giving a little bit more clarity on when we could potentially see this, is where they're going to allow sellers to see where they are lacking for visibility. And I think that's going to be incredibly important. So I'm excited to hear that. And I think he said like late summer, which we're approaching that now. So Josh, let's get that thing out there before Q4. What do you say, Joshy boy? Let's get that thing out the door.
Late summer for a 7-year-long beta potentially,
yeah,
right? We know that they are working on this. And I think one of the things that really stood out is they said that they were able to already diversify just on the changes that they've made so far. And I think Etsy sellers may not feel this because we're in the slowest part of the year. But one of the things that he pointed out there, Scott, was 70% of the shops that they've tested this with had more visibility in search, meaning when people searched, they were seen more frequently. And the share of search impressions for small shops, and this is something everybody's worried about. And one of the reasons they looked at conversion and then had the Etsy listing boost, right? You create that new boost and they're trying to figure out how you fit into the whole Etsy ecosystem, was to account for the difference between large shops and small shops. They said this outperformed with small shops, and they were able to increase search impressions. So how often you show up in a search result for those smaller and medium-sized shops by almost 30%. So a huge increase for those people by doing it this way. And I wanted, before you and I discuss what this actually looks like, I wanted to give the Q&A portion of this because he does expand on that teleprompter answer a little bit in response to one of the investor questions.
Okay, really cool. Optimized for conversion, which is why we have historically shown you, for example, multiple very similar variants of an item. If the black box algorithm thinks the most likely thing you're going to buy is this, it might show you 8 variants of roughly the same thing. And if that's actually what you wanted for the 2 or 3% of people who are really ready to buy that thing, that was a great experience and it drives conversion. But what about the other 97% who really weren't necessarily ready to buy? We would be much better served to show them a broader variety of things so that they understand everything we have on offer, whether they're going to buy this session or come back more often. So I think what we're going to end up with now, dramatic improvements in the diversity of items we're showing on Etsy, the diversity of sellers we're showing on Etsy, I think is going to drive a lot more people to say, wow, there's a lot more stuff for sale than I realized. There's more categories of items for sale than I realized, and they're going to come back more often. That's what I'm really excited about.
Yeah. So I would love to be at that little table that they're at though right now, because I got some questions. But my thing is like, okay, that sounds great in theory. Okay. The main thing that I heard there was we want to let shoppers know that we have more than just from that one seller, right? That's kind of what I got. And they're saying like, that's going to make them go, oh, wow, Etsy's got a lot of things on here. That's great. I'm going to come back. Versus if you split test that the old way to the new way, are your sales going to suffer because you're not showing them the ones that have gotten the most sales, which have more reviews and have higher conversions? Is that going to actually decrease your conversion rate on the front end for Etsy? Not us, but for Etsy. The seller that's getting more listing positions is going to obviously benefit more, but is that going to hurt conversions overall? And I'm sure they're split testing that, because if that shows, that experiment shows, and they're like, okay, cool, but we can't prove that people are coming back to the shop more and buying more. They might be coming back, but they're not buying. But over here on test A, we're showing them more of the same, but they're buying more. Why are you going to change that? Right? So for the newer seller, the medium-sized seller, and you're like, oh, cool, this is going to give me an opportunity to show in search. But if you're not getting sales, is that really going to benefit? And are you going to show up in search? Don't know. The verdict will still be out, but I know they're going to be split testing this because, I mean, that's going to be a huge thing that they got to look at as far as the data. You're not just going to roll this out and go, oh, great, we rolled it out. There's going to be data behind it.
Yeah, and I think the real impetus behind this, and he said the word, and I'm not sure if you picked up on it, Scott, and I have one more clip that I want to share with you, and I want to see if you
little bonus clip
recall from this another algorithm that you and I are fairly familiar with that uses the same word. And so I'm going to pull this clip in.
Efforts we've had in place in the past continue in terms of having a robust toolkit for sellers so they can put their items on sale. They can offer, a discount to a returning customer. If you've left an item in checkout, they can offer you a coupon to get you to come back and close. And we see sellers continue to use and adopt those tools. We have, for example, as part of the loyalty program, Deals and Drops, we're going to be highlighting like things that we think are really cool value and really special value. We want to lean more into discovery on Etsy.
Where have you heard that word before?
Discovery. Are
Suggestions.
What's that?
Suggestions. Discovery.
Yeah.
Right. Instead of waiting for you to search for the thing.
Yeah.
We're going to show you the thing.
So it's more, I think we're piggybacking off of the big giant out there.
YouTube.
Yes.
Right. And that change in YouTube's algorithm, YouTube is the second biggest search engine in the world, but 80% of their traffic comes from browse and suggest, the videos they are giving to you.
Yep.
20%, they are the second largest search engine in the world and only 20% of their traffic. And so what I think Josh is saying here, and again, you guys can go listen to the entire investor call if you want to watch your eyes bleed. But what they are saying is they want to move away from only keyword relevance to say, when you come to Etsy, we want to show you the next thing you're going to buy before you have to think about it. And if we're thinking about it that way, do you still feel the same way about that change in the potential conversion rate? Or are you saying, okay, maybe the first conversion is harder to get, but the repeat conversions are potentially easier to get because every product that's being shown to that user is something they would potentially buy before they type anything into the search.
I guess it would come down to this though. And this is the difference. YouTube, I'm looking at it as that's not an entertainment. It's like I'm bored. Let me go to my app, and while my wife's in getting groceries, I'm going to scroll some YouTube, right? Entertain myself, educate myself, whatever. If I don't find myself going to Amazon, let's say, to just browse for random stuff. So I don't know if it's going to have the same effect as that. I understand the logic, but I don't know. And again, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there are, and again, it's primarily, I'm sure, women that are on Etsy. I don't know what the demographics are, but I'm pretty sure the last I checked, it was more Etsy was women than it was men. Are they going to go there like a Pinterest thing and kind of like just scroll to see what's new and then get suggested things and be like, oh, that's sweet. That's cool. So it's not so much on search. I don't know if that'll ever outperform search on a platform like Etsy or like Amazon or like eBay, right? You're going there looking for something. I'm not saying that there's not something there that while you're searching, you see recommendations for other things that might be of interest to you. But for people to just go there and browse, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't see it as the same. I don't see it as the same. That's just my take on it.
Yeah, and I think what they are telling us is there's essentially two major changes to what they're doing. The first thing is they're trying to eliminate what they consider to be duplicate search results.
Yep.
Right. So somebody on Google, if you go to Google and you type in how to feed a hamster and you get 7 articles in a row that are essentially the same thing, that's a duplicate search result. What Etsy is saying is one of the biggest complaints, both from buyers and sellers, is that they type something in, and because we're only using the conversion-based approach, they will see 7 listings or 10 listings that look fairly similar. So is there a way that we can incorporate the highest 1 or 2 likely products to be purchased from that search result and then other things that they haven't thought about yet. And Scott, they went in the investor call, they went in a little bit to what they call demi-fine jewelry, where they're doing some additional search refinement, where they're giving you like pop-up bubbles to say, okay, you search this. Did you actually mean this? And what they found was a lift in conversions and a lift in gross merchandise sales, just in that one specific category, right? And so if we're thinking about layering those two things together, that starts to make a lot of sense. And then once you get a little bit of data on somebody, when they come to Etsy, and most people, they're driving towards the app now because what they saw was browsing behavior turned into buying behavior there frequently. So you're not necessarily losing out if you're driving people to the app and giving them that experience and saying, hey, here's this really cool thing. Here's this really cool thing. Here's this really cool thing. In the background, you're still going to be reliant on conversion rate as a metric, right? They're not just going to show you something cool because they think it's cool. They're going to show you something cool because they think you're going to buy it. But they're going to be much less reliant on the words you type in and on the actual conversion rate of that product, because they're moving away from a keyword-based search and much more towards a recommendation engine. Because what they've seen over and over again is that doing direct text matching is very hard, especially with the diversity of things that Etsy has in the catalog. And so if they can figure out a better way to do associative matching, or figure out buying patterns, right? This person buys fishing stuff. Let's just keep showing them fishing stuff every time they come to the homepage. You're much more likely to turn any of that browsing behavior into actual purchase behavior. So they're moving away from that direct association and more towards an indirect association. As we start to see this, what do you think this means for sellers moving forward?
Well, I think it's an opportunity. I think it's an opportunity, but does it change anything? Does it change like the way that you're putting your listings together? Are you changing the way you're titling? Are you changing the way you're doing images? No, I don't really think that you are. So there's really not a lot of control. Only thing that I feel the control aspect is they're going to give us insight as far as how we are performing, and is our listing giving all of the data that the algorithm wants. And I think that's the big thing here for sellers to understand is when that rolls out, we want to pay attention to that, because that is clearly telling us these are the things that potentially could get you ranked higher, right? And it might even be to the point where it's like your conversion is 0.75. We would like to see you increase that. So what it's basically saying is there's other people selling here and they're converting higher than you. So let's try to get the conversion up. Well, here's some recommendations how to do that. Improve your image quality, improve your tags, like whatever, right? Like those are some things that might come into play. That's the more important piece here. The discoverability, the suggestions, like all that stuff, is things I can't control. But what I can control is having a really, really good high quality image that when I do get shown up in these suggestions, hopefully, that people are going to see it, like it, and click on it.
I think for me, the immediate alarm bell trigger, whatever we want to call it, that went off in my head, Scott, is niche-based shops are going to have a huge advantage in that ecosystem. Why? Because that associative data all ties into each other. All of the listings are roughly about the same thing, right? All of the keyword data, which they're still going to use to some extent. Even YouTube, who relies 80% on suggestions and discovery, uses that keyword data through the transcript, through the stuff that you put in the descriptions, right, to serve those videos to the right people. Niche-based stores are going to have a huge advantage because they're going to have the text that is all associated around that niche. They're going to have the buyer behaviors that are associated around that niche, right? Somebody who's into avocados is not buying something from a fishing store necessarily, right? They're going to go buy from the avocado store or whatever it is. Probably a terrible example because there's a big crossover there, but you guys get what I'm saying. If we have an everything store, we lose out on the extra metrics that we will get in a suggestion type of a system. When Etsy identifies that Scott is a big bass fishing fan, they're now going to start favoring, even more than they already do from a personalization in the keyword-driven search results, something that they think he would buy based on his purchase history, based on his browse history, based on his interests, right? The things he's signaling to Etsy he might be interested in, they're going to start showing him more of that before he ever gets to the search bar. The best way to take advantage of that, again, because they're not going to tell us exactly how to do it, is to make sure that everything we have is related. And if we can do that, then we can put ourselves ahead of the ball. And when we start to do some of the optimization stuff, when they theoretically give us a score on how to improve our stuff, which may or may not ever come out of beta, we're at least ahead of the curve.